My name is Julie. I have a background in biology, but right now I'm finishing my master's here at DTU in aquatic science and technology. And I got introduced to this project through a small research project I did this port in Denmark.
I'm Lars. I'm originally from Germany and have a background in industrial engineering and mechanical engineering. And I got introduced to this project from a professor from my last semester, Sustainability and Management. That's how the course was called.
I'm an environmental engineer specialized in environmental management and climate change with a bachelor in chemical engineering. I'm a big sailor and a sea enthusiast. And so for me, hearing about Tribune and a way to discover the shipping industry was what motivated me.
I'm Nils. I'm 25 years old. I have bachelor's in civil engineering from DTU. And now I'm studying an industrial master degree, also in civil engineering at DTU. So I work half-time and I study half-time.
How did you collaborate with the crew on board, and what were some lessons you learned from them?
We, especially in the beginning of the trip, we worked a lot with trying to plan and see different parts of the ship and different processes. For example, when you're arriving at the ports and when you're departing from the ports and preparing the engine and that sort of stuff. So we had to plan a lot where we needed to be on the ship, and we split up in groups, and then two of us went with some of the crew and the two others with a different part of the crew to see as much as we could of the process. So in that way we collaborated very directly, trying to plan our time.
So we had this, one day we were even given a radio so that because there was so much to do, no one could be assigned to like kind of walk with us, but we would receive calls and be like, okay, there is an interesting out-of-bound container in this bay. You can come now, and then you can see how it's done. And then we would chat with the person there. Then in resting hours, we would try to find people either in the common areas or things like this. And then sometimes people even came to us. Like Lars and I, we had a very nice conversation with the chief engineer when we were resting. And what I learned the most, I think it's the practicalities. What does it mean to actually run the ship? Like waiting for bad weather to clean the tank, which I think was a really genius move. It's something that is not really in any handbook, but that you learn from the crew.
What were some of the most eye-opening moments and experiences that you had on board?
For me personally, it was the complexity of the fuel management. We've learned that there are different types of fuel on board, which we were, I think, all not aware of, like on like how many there were actually. And then depending on the local regulations, they need to switch between the different fuel types. And that is some kind of tricky because it needs to be planned well ahead. And there are unforeseen circumstances that can happen. We, for example, had one situation where one of the berths was occupied in the harbor. So we were not allowed to berth in time and needed to drift 12 hours offshore. Then we needed to change the fuel type again because that was not planned to drift so long outside the harbor.
Which port was that?
That was Bremerhaven. And so because of the size of the fuel pipe infrastructure that fits, I think, 3,900 liters just one way, sometimes the whole system needs to be flushed with one fuel to ensure we are sticking to the regulations. And I personally didn't know that, so that was definitely one of the eye-openers.
I think the most eye-opening experience for me was seeing the ship from the first time from the harbor itself, then like towering above us. It's like really, really big. 22 decks, I think, something from the hull to the tallest point of the ship. And then the length of the ship also was massive, of course, compared to the size of the crew. I was first surprised. I didn't know before that we were maybe around 20, 24 crew on board. Then also seeing the engine rooms, how big they were, and there were several decks and even an elevator to get up and down. So a lot of things to get, to have hold on and look after, especially with all the water systems they have on board, like treatment systems. They have a water maker that turns salt water into fresh water use on board, and they also have all sorts of separators for purification of the fuels they tank, or oily water separators, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah. So all that was very eye-opening for me.
I think another eye-opener for me was also the preparedness for emergencies. We were quite lucky that there was a big crew change, so they had to do a drill, and we were part of the drill. I think it was 2 drills in total, or three drills in total. Seeing how each crew member has a specific or like a changing role within these emergencies was quite impressive.
How did your perception of the shipping industry and its environmental impact change after your time on board of our ship?
Well, it went from being very limited in general to knowing all the complexities of what shipping is. I had an angle on it that was maybe a little bit negative because I had done a research project about the environmental impacts of some of the wastewater discharged. But I also saw that there were some solutions on board that did work and that did originate from older conventions and international agreements on how to treat the, for example, impacts from oily water.
I had a negative but a bit unfounded view beforehand, and now it's mitigated but documented.
Okay.
Yeah, and also understanding that there's always like the trade-off between economic performance and pressure, and then also the sustainability pressure. Seeing that firsthand was quite insightful.
Yeah, and also what is possible to actually work on board a ship where you have human resources working and living for a long period of time. So, yeah.
Lars, which of the environmental improvement opportunities that you identified would have the biggest impact on sustainability?
I think the biggest impact on sustainability would have the shift to ultra-low sulfur fuel oil permanently and not having any other fuel type for the main engine on board. At least we're just talking about the ones that are not running on methanol yet. Because it would, first of all, help a lot with the fuel management on board. They don't need to always look what the local regulations are and switch between the fuel types. I already touched on that previously. And then there are many other things, many other advantages that come with it. There's no preheating or no intensive preheating needed anymore for the lower sulfur fuel types. The whole maintenance intervals could be increased by up to 40% when I talked to the chief engineer. Due to the better fuel quality, there's no sludge being accumulated. I think Milo talked already about the bad sides of the sulfur. And when there's just the lower sulfur fuel oil used, there's no need for scrubbers. They also take 25% of the whole energy consumption of the ship, which is a lot in my opinion. So they could completely neglect the scrubbers and get rid of them. I think that would be the biggest change and easy to implement.
Thank you very much. Milo, which of the environmental improvement opportunities that you found would have the biggest impact on the shipping industry as a whole?
I think for the shipping industry as a whole, it would be interesting to shift the mentality and the view from only a transportation industry to an energy industry. Because in and of its own, the shipping is just energy spent in moving stuff. But by only being at the receiving end and having to deal with the fuel and the industry and having this part where they don't really have an impact, I think expanding the operations to energy production and internal energy production would be really interesting. And one of the improvements that I discussed in my report was the onboard production of fuels with the captured carbon.
Cool, thank you. Nils, how did you go about finding viable solutions while you were on board? How did the brainstorming and the identification of solutions work for you?
It varied a lot based on the type of issue that we found. If it was a technical issue, in general, we are a team of 4 quite nerdy people. So we had a lot of ideas and a lot of suggested solutions that we could either disprove or maybe consider going further with. So that was quite easy, but on the more humanitarian side, it was a lot more difficult because it was not just adding more steel, as maybe I would say as a structural engineer. So it was quite different depending on the process, depending on the issue, I should say.
All right, thank you very much.